Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Here on this channel, we talk about everything to do with the African diaspora, politics, music, life, love and everything in between. Today we're going to talk about the interview that Buhari had on Arise TV. Now Buhari said quite a few times actually that you're not being fair to me, so we're going to be fair to Buhari today, right? We're going to be fair to Buhari. So I'm going to look at that, and also I'm just going to point out a couple of things that I noticed about Buhari, and then you tell me in the comments what you think, if you agree or you don't. So hold on. Right, so that interview now, that interview was really interesting, and honestly I will say that Buhari needs to do more interviews because he's really funny and he doesn't even know it. But I think another thing that struck me about the interview is the fact that a lot of people say, oh, Buhari's got dementia. Let me tell you, Buhari does not have dementia. That interview proved that Buhari does not have dementia, right? There was one point where he was talking and they were asking him about the southeast, and he referred to, I think, the southwest, and they were trying to say, no, you mean the southeast? And he said, no, I'm talking about the southwest, and this is what happened. So anyway, let's get into it. The first thing that struck me was, I don't know who the guy in black was, but he looked like the black Papa Smurf. I don't know, he's got something to do with Arise. So forgive me if you have some kind of senior position, but for some reason, I can't look at that fella and not think about Papa Smurf. He really looked like Papa Smurf. If you don't know Papa Smurf, Google it and you will know what I'm talking about. Anyway, on to the interview now. So let's break it down in terms of like the categories that Buhari was looking at. So I'm going to try and condense everything, right? The first thing that struck me now, when Black Papa Smurf said, Your Excellency or whatever, it's a privilege, to be here with you. You can see on Buhari's face, it was not a privilege for him. He looked like, seriously, I'd rather be herding my cows.
It's a privilege to be with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
He looked like the man smell. So I'm thinking, Buhari doesn't really want to do this, but he's going to do it anyway. And I'm glad that he did. They talked about insecurity. So I think one of the first questions was around insecurity. And Buhari said that it's very difficult, and they did things like close the borders, and they stopped this, they stopped that. And one of the things he said to Nigerians is to grow what you eat and eat what you grow. Send them back to the farms, which in theory sounds like a really good idea. People in hot countries should definitely be growing what they eat. Even on their front yard, right? You can grow something. I'm sorry, but you can grow something. And if you're not growing it, it's because you're lazy, right? You just ain't even trying. So he was saying things like, they made fertilizer available, blah, 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 blah. And yes, he talked about corruption as well. And for me, corruption was really interesting. Fighting corruption under this system, and he meant a democratic system, was a very difficult thing to do. So then he kind of referred back to the way he used to handle it, right? So he used to lock up people, and I think he said something like, you're guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. But he said it got to the point where he ended up being arrested and detained, and the people that he'd once detained were given back their money. So obviously, right, that is a system failure. So that is a real failure in the system. Insecurity, Buhari talks about the fact that he linked it right fair and square to poverty. Buhari linked insecurity to poverty and unemployment, okay? So that's one of the things that, to me, it came across like he's been speaking to the governors and telling them, this is what you guys need to do, and they're not doing it. On insecurity, he said that they've been having a lot of success, but they don't want to publicize the success that they're having. So I don't know why they're not going to want to do that. But he was sort of saying, they know themselves. They've been having a lot of success. Boko Haram have been facing a lot of casualties, and, they're just not publicizing that. I don't know why. I think it was Tundan that asked him about formalizing, is it time to formalize, is it time to formalize state police? To that, now, this was really interesting. So Buhari was referring back to a time where they use kind of more traditional means of, traditional means of securing the environment. So he talked about the traditional chiefs, and he was saying that they know who the criminals are, and once upon a time these elders used to meet, they used to have these gatherings. So we kind of all know about those systems, right? Those systems are quite common across the continent. And so he was sort of saying that for the governors that are coming to him complaining about insecurity, he will send them back, because it's no point you campaign to win an election and yet you want to sit down and you want someone else to do your job. So he was sort of saying you need to go back and do your job, right? Can't really argue with that. Now, around, the farmer herder crisis now, so Buhari was asked a question about open grazing, and for him now, he was sort of saying that they need to go back to the Gazette of the First Republic, where they had like grazing routes, and if your cattle strayed onto someone's land or damaged their crops, you will pay taxes, you will pay a fine. And that was back then when people were obeying the laws and they didn't have those kind of issues. With the devolution of power, now they were trying to, they were talking about that whole exclusive list thing again, right? But they didn't go into detail. So they just asked him about the devolution of power. So Buhari said that, you've got 3 tiers of government. You've got the federal, the state, and the local. He said basically the local government has been killed. Now, the reason he's saying that is basically down to corruption, right? And the corruption of the governors. So he's saying that with local government, if they've been asked to sign a contract to say they've received 300,000, you sign that, but yet you receive 100,000. You understand? So basically, what is that, right? So those are real issues. So he's basically saying they're not working is failed. Education, Buhari said back in his day now, if you misbehave in class, you'd be brought forward to the front of the class, you'd be flogged. But now he's saying basically the standards, there are no standards, right? He's sort of saying standards have dropped. Buhari said the standard in education has collapsed. When he talked about the trouble in the southeast, Buhari basically said that, Buhari said IPOB are like a dot in a circle, right? And he was saying that due to some of the meetings he's had with some of those Southwest governors or Southwest whoever, he was saying that this time around there'll be no access to the sea. And so basically they're kind of landlocked. They're just shut in. There's nowhere for them to go. And for him, again, he used the phrase, he'll speak to them in a language that they understand. So that again was like Buhari, really, Buhari's not a man that's going to change any day soon, right? He's old school, so that's what he meant. He said that they're going to come down hard on them and he will mobilize the military against them, which he has been doing anyway for the longest time. That's Buhari's way of dealing with the whole issue. So when he was then asked about how he can make his government a bit more diverse, Buhari was sort of saying that it's not because of where you come from. He's trying to say that you work your way up and you can't expect something to just fall in your lap because you come from a certain part of the country or whatever. And so when he was asked, I think Papa Smurf asked him now about, how he can increase confidence in that area, Buhari was just sort of like saying that they have people from the southeast in their in state or in their civil government or whatever. So basically he was saying there are people there, you just don't know about it, kind of do your homework. He was asked where should the next president come from. Again, Buhari sort of said, well, you need to let the party decide, let the people decide. It's not for him to say, well, I think the next president should come from X. When he was asked about direct investment, now this was what kind of made me laugh a little bit. Buhari now said, remember those young people from NSAS who were going to march down here to... Hey, remember those young people, right, from NSAS who wanted to march down there and remove him? which I thought was funny because that's just a typical kind of old man response, right? But nevertheless, that's what he said. He was saying basically, tell those young people that nobody will invest in an insecure environment. So if you want jobs, you need to behave yourself and make sure that the country is secure. And that will solve the problem. Then people will come in and invest, right? So again, so Buhari kind of put the onus on the people. When Buhari was talking about the lack of infrastructure and roads and development, he alluded to the fact, again, there's been a lot of waste, right? He said, what have you done with the money? And that is a question that, to be honest, we all need to ask. In a nutshell, you see this interview with Buhari. It was interesting on this interview with Buhari. To me, what Buhari is saying is, number one, people need to behave themselves. He referred to the fact that back in the time when people were following laws, meaning that now people are not following laws and they are lawless. And also, he talked about go and do your job. So, if you're a governor in a state, go and do your job. He talked about the demise of local government because of corruption. So in a way, Buhari's kind of saying that the reason the country is a mess is because these people are lawless, right? They're just lawless and they're not following any kind of rules or systems. They're lawless and corrupt. So for Buhari, if you're not lawless and corrupt, the country would work quite well. When he spoke about like the 3 tiers of government, what he did say was, if people were following the system, there wouldn't be any issue. And you know what? I have to agree with that. I have to agree with the fact that, and this is why I say to people, it is not just about Buhari. Buhari is not the man beating his wife. Like, he's not the man that beat his wife. He's not the man that abuses his daughter. He's not the man selling human body parts. He's not the man scamming in the market. He's not the one scamming on the internet. You understand? People need to take accountability. That's why I said, like, with the constitution, everyone's saying, oh, we need to change it. You're not even following the one you've got. So if you were following the one you've got, things will be better than they are now. And if he's saying that the 3 tiers of government are not even working well, not because there's anything in particular wrong with the system, but because people just don't want to follow the rules and regulations. So when Buhari's face looked like, I don't even want to be here, that is why I think Buhari doesn't want to be there, because I think he's just fed up of the people, the lack of discipline and the lawlessness. And I think if he were operating as a general Buhari, I think he would have dealt with things a lot even harsher than he's dealing with things now. So that's me being fair on Buhari. I can't be any fairer than that. I don't agree with the way that the Southeast have been marginalised, but what are the governors doing? Are they not the ones also responsible for that, for the brutality? What are the governors in the Southeast doing to protect their people? It would look like they're not doing anything. And is that Buhari's fault? Or is that their fault? You understand? So anyway, that's my short video on the matter. I hope you guys had a nice weekend. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.